of Going All In, Get the Edge You Need to Succeed. I'm Dr. Erin McKinley, and today we have another awesome spotlight session with Lisa Mastroianni from the Yale New Haven Hospital Dietetic Internship Program based in New Haven, Connecticut. All right, welcome to the podcast, Lisa. To get us started today, give us a little bit of background about you, your journey to RD, and how you landed at Yale New Haven Hospital.
Sure. Thank you so much for the introduction and offering to host this web podcast. So I actually became interested in nutrition in my sophomore year of college. I worked in a pharmacy where they had a health food store, and the pharmacist gave a lot of nutrition advice, which as I went through my training, realized was inaccurate and full of fallacies, and that spurred me on to becoming a registered dietitian. I went to the University of Connecticut for my undergraduate and did my master's degree at University of New Haven. And I landed at Yale New Haven for my internship in between those two programs. And I've never left. I'm lucky to work in an organization that is a large organization. So I've been able to hold 3 different jobs while I've been working here. I started as an inpatient clinical dietitian in medical surgical floors. I precepted interns. I really enjoyed that. And then I moved into a management role. I originally started managing our diet technicians. We had at the time just a regular food service delivery with paper menus. And then we've transitioned 3 times while I was the manager to a spoken menu, to cook chill, and now to where we are with room service for our patients. And then an opportunity became available to move into a different management role, which is where I occupy now. So I manage our ambulatory nutrition as a clinical nutrition manager. There are 3 of us, and we have another person on the phone call with us as well. And then when I had the opportunity to take on the dietetic internship, I wanted to take that opportunity as well. So that's sort of the history of my career in a nutshell.
All right. Well, tell us all about your program.
Sure. So I'm going to run through some slides to go through this overview, but on the first slide, and I want to thank one of our dietetic interns, Rebecca McCollum, who's on the webcast with us, and she helped to put these slides together. So thank you for that. But these are actual pictures of the facilities. The one in the center is our newest facility, which is our cancer hospital, Smilow Cancer Hospital. It is a pretty impressive building. So just to give you an overview of our internship, our mission is to train competent, well-rounded entry-level registered dietitians to ensure the viability of the dietetics profession as the recognized leaders and experts in food and nutrition. We are a standalone dietetic internship at a large academic medical teaching hospital. And as you might guess, our program emphasis is clinical. Every internship has at least one program concentration, and ours is nutrition support. Our program length is one of the longer programs. We are a 50-week program, and we are eligible to accept up to 12 interns. As far as scheduling, our interns are generally on rotation for 4 days out of the week, and then a 5th day is a seminar class day. It is a not for credit class day. So we have various lecturers come in and cover various different topics throughout the year. So I think there's an upcoming slide that will talk a little bit more about that. The master's degree link that we have right now is with the University of New Haven. They do have 2 graduate programs that our interns can access, which is the Master's in Public Health and the Master's in Healthcare Administration. So for those who might be interested in student loans, that is the way to access student loans. You would have to enroll in the University of New Haven's master's degree program and register the internship as a class in order to be eligible. Unfortunately, the hospital is not eligible to offer student loans. And then important piece is that all rotations take place at the hospital, so it is not required to have a car. The program is divided into 3 main areas of focus, and so you can see them here, and we'll go through each a little bit more. In terms of clinical, most interns who come to our program really are interested in being clinical dietitians, and I don't draw a distinction between clinical inpatient and outpatient, I do just draw a distinction between clinical and community, so we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Our rotations are varied. They can change a little bit year over year, but we do have cardiology, CT surgery, infectious disease, and renal, general medicine, surgery, medical ICU. One of the things that distinguishes our program is that we do have a children's hospital, and so there are dedicated pediatric rotations. So you are learning about care of pediatric patients, hands-on with inpatients and outpatients. We also have psychiatry, oncology. I mentioned that we have the cancer hospital, and we have a multitude of critical care, which is part of the reason that we are able to offer the nutrition support concentration. We also do have a solid organ transplant program and a neuro ICU. So at this point, I wanted to just throw the conversation to one of our inpatient preceptors and former graduates, Erica Lowenkron, who's on with us. So Erica precepts as part of our infectious disease and renal rotation. So Erica, would you like to talk a little bit about your experience as a former graduate and a preceptor of an inpatient clinical rotation?
Of course. So I matched at the Yale Dietetic Internship, and I had a great experience going through all of the different rotations. I really appreciated the broad spectrum of experiences that we had with all of the different rotations. I did really enjoy the infectious disease and renal rotation while I was an intern, so I'm really happy that I'm able to precept that rotation as well. So my floor is part infectious disease and part general medicine on the normal, but right now it is a COVID unit, and then I also cover a COVID maternity unit and just a general overflow unit. So for the rotation, there are different assignments that would go with your 2-week-long rotation, and so you would be able to screen the floors to make the list for the day, and then you'll chart review for the different patients that would be assigned, and then you'll be able to go and see the patients. Now, we're here as preceptors to help you, to guide you along, but most of it does end up being independent work, and you do learn very quickly how to be an entry-level dietitian.
So just a couple pictures of our atrium. And then, so I'll talk a little bit about the management rotations. So we do have 6 weeks of management rotations. 2 of them are spent with me on the clinical nutrition management side, and 2 are spent with one of our other clinical nutrition managers, Donna Casaria. And we also have 2 weeks with our food service colleagues. So the interns during these rotations will gain experience in strategic planning, in operations management, and finance overview, as well as the nuts and bolts of human resources management and the way that we would run both the internship, our diet office, and the clinical nutrition management of our section. So at this point, I'll give an opportunity for one of our other clinical managers, Donna Casaria, to talk a little bit about the metabolic kitchen, as well as our milk room.
So the metabolic kitchen management rotation involves various different aspects. We have an NIH-funded research unit here that's been part of the hospital/university for many, many years. And you get to see the execution of some of the nutrition components of studies that different investigators are involved in, from different diet recall type studies to studies where we may actually prepare very controlled nutrient meals for subjects that they may come and pick up for several weeks at a time, because maybe the level of protein in their diet is what's being studied. So we have a separate kitchen that supports that. Plus, we all, when you're on this rotation, we do have a milk room that is part of our newborn ICU, and you will learn various different functions of how that milk room operates, how we fortify breast milk, how we prepare our specialized formulas, and all the QI processes that go involved in that, as long as what Lisa had mentioned, the human resource management, from scheduling to performance reviews to various different aspects of managing people. So those are the 2 main focuses of this rotation. And like Lisa had mentioned, we also have a pretty robust pediatric rotation. So part of what I do as well is I manage the pediatric service line, both inpatient and outpatient. So you may get involved with me doing some business planning for expanding services that we provide as a nutrition department on the pediatric side of the hospital.
Great, thanks, Donna. And I should mention that the internship is a labor of love for our section. And although I'm the program director of record, Donna is a key part of what it takes to run this program. So I could not do it without her, as well as our preceptors who are on the call. So my appreciation to all of you. Okay, and this is one of our current interns outfitted for COVID. And then our other area of rotations is our community focus. So in this section, I do like to distinguish a little bit between community and ambulatory outpatient. So technically, these rotations do occur at the hospital, and although they deal with patients in the community, they are occurring in our ambulatory outpatient area. So they are still very clinically focused, and it's not a true community experience where you'd be out in the community in community agencies. So I just want to make that clear. We do have various rotations, one of which is an extended rotation in our nutrition clinic. And we actually have one of our preceptors also on today with us, Kiara Jaritsma. And she is also a former graduate and now a preceptor for this rotation. So she's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to work in the nutrition clinic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kiara. And the nutrition clinic is a really unique rotation, 3 weeks long. And you get an opportunity to be quite independent. So the first week you'll spend with your preceptors, you're observing, reviewing charts, things like that, doing a little bit of team teaching with us. But for the final 3 weeks, you are working pretty independently and you have your complete own schedule. So you're reviewing your patients, you're conducting visits on your own, and then you're writing your notes. So I loved this rotation. I loved getting to work a little bit more independently, and you get to see a variety of patients, you get to connect with them a little bit more one-on-one, spend a little bit more time. So there's a lot of things to be learned and a lot of experience to be had. So super fun.
Great, thanks, Kiara. I know your audio was a little bit choppy, but I think people could probably hear the overview. And I agree with Kiara. One of the great things about this rotation is the independence. It is definitely an adjustment for interns, but you do get to spend additional time with a patient. Our initial assessments are an hour, and our follow-ups are 30 minutes. So you're really in the room with the patient, getting to know them, spending more time than you get to in some other arenas that you would be seeing patients in. So that's great. And we also have the opportunity in outpatient areas to develop a real relationship with our clients, a little bit less so for our interns because they don't stay in any rotation all that long, but yet still you do get to see patients who've been coming to get nutrition services for a while. Also, our outpatient rotations include some specific to oncology. So we do have an inpatient oncology rotation and also 3 weeks of outpatient oncology in our medical oncology clinics, and then also our radiation oncology clinic. And then talk a little bit more about specialty clinics. Oh, sorry, this is Kiara and our scheduling coordinator, Claudia, who functions as room mom and overall cheerleader for the interns when they are getting ready to see their clients for the first time and feeling a little bit nervous. So a 1 week rotation that I do like to highlight is our specialty clinic rotation. Because we are such a large institution, we do have a lot of different clinics for small niche programs that you may not be able to observe in other dietetic internships. So this is sort of a list of some of the clinics that we have access to. And we've designed a 1 week rotation where the intern gets to select which clinics they would like to spend their time in. And then I would go ahead and schedule based on availability and when the clinics are meeting, what that intern will actually get to do. And that's an observation experience. There are some opportunities outside of the campus, but they all can be completed on campus if you don't have a car. So a really great opportunity. And actually, Rebecca's just turned in her preference list for this year's class. But if there's questions about this week, Erica and Kiara can definitely touch base about that when we have a question and answer session. So other rotations, special interest, we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, and then staff responsibility. So for staff relief or staff responsibility, all of our interns have the opportunity to do at least 2 weeks and usually more like 4 weeks of staff relief. It did change a little bit last year just due to COVID, but everyone still did have the opportunity to do independent staff relief. So what that looks like is the dietitians will take time off, and at that time we will schedule our dietetic interns to do relief coverage for them. They will still have a preceptor who is overseeing their care, but they function a lot more independently and try to manage a service by themselves. It typically happens in the late spring and over the summer, and it's a really good way for the interns to try out their skills and really feel like they are ready to graduate. It also positions them really well to start off as an entry-level dietitian. So that is consistent feedback that I receive from employers that our graduates are really ready to practice independently once they learn the ins and outs and policies of the new facility they'd be going to, but they're ready to practice nutrition. So that's really gratifying feedback. And I do think it's a lot to do with the overall training, the length of the program, and the option to do staff relief. Special interest. So you'll see on our website that we do have an optional 2-week special interest rotation. So this would be an intern generated rotation. It is totally optional, is not required in any way, and there's no negative aspect to not completing a special interest rotation. But yet we do recognize that although we offer a lot of rotations, there are definitely opportunities outside of our hospital system where interns may want to get some exposure. Sometimes interns use this as an opportunity to go closer to home and get a little exposure at a facility they're hoping to work at. We don't offer things like long-term care here, so that's also an opportunity for a special interest rotation. So the intern would generate the idea, bring it to me, we would talk it through. I may or may not have some contacts that I can leverage to help set up this rotation, and then the intern will try to coordinate this rotation for themselves. Sometimes in lieu of this, interns will choose to do additional staff relief in an area they're interested in. So this is typical for our dietetic interns who are interested in pediatrics. They'll often prefer to stay on site and do more pediatric work. And then also those who are interested in critical care may also choose to do the same. So we definitely have a split, but both Erica and Kiara did special interest rotations, so they can talk about that when we do a Q&A. As far as our seminar classes that I mentioned earlier, so these are just some of the examples of field trips and classes that our interns will do as part of that class day every week, or almost every week. And Donna really helps to coordinate this class schedule and put together just a schedule of when each class will occur. We did, during COVID, we did move some of these to a virtual platform. And so we actually have some more longer workshops and things that can be completed as part of supervised practice days. Eric and Kiara both came up with some segments related to this for virtual learning, related to sustainability, which were really well received. So that was an additional option for us this year with the pandemic. But I should just mention, related to COVID, all of our interns are currently on site. We have not had to send anybody out of the hospital despite the pandemic. Last spring, we did send them out for about 10 weeks, just because of the height of the pandemic and not really knowing how it was transmitted, and just to err on the side of safety. And we did switch to more of those virtual sessions so they could still get supervised practice hours, but they were out of the hospital for that time period. But this year we have not had to do that, and I don't anticipate that we will have to do that. All the hospital has their full complement of students still in the hospital. So not just dietetic interns, but also medical students, respiratory therapy, nursing students. So as our chief medical officer says, we still have to train the next generation of professionals. And so we can't put a stop to that during a pandemic. Classes, our dietitians will come in and teach a little bit more in detail on some of the disease states that they cover. So you'll get some classes about that. Field trips I mentioned. Out into the community we have a family farm run by a dietitian. So that's Jones Farm, and that's always a really fun field trip at the end of the year that the interns get to go on. We will always send you to at least one of our local A&D affiliate meetings. So it may be virtual this year, but the interns will still attend. And then as part of an academic medical center, there are a lot of educational opportunities available. And so the interns on my rotation will actually look at the calendar of Yale School of Medicine sponsored events and add those into a shared calendar for their fellow interns. We may make them optional. We may occasionally make them mandatory. So as part of a class day or a seminar day. Right. And then normally during tours, I get a lot of questions about applications and what we need to know related to that. So the dates are on here for spring match. It's always February 15th. Our application fee is $75. We do not require the GRE, nor does the University of New Haven if you choose to apply to their master's programs. We ask for 3 recommendations. For personal statement, we do have some specific questions that we ask. They are available on our website, so just ask that you would pay attention to that and follow the instructions related to that. And then any applicant that is under consideration will receive a request for a video interview. Our selection committee is usually fairly large, somewhere around 12 to 16 participants. So it's preceptors, it's usually one intern from the class, the management team, and then we will break up into interview groups of 2 faculty members to interview each dietetic intern applicant via video. Applicant notification day this year is April 5th, and you would have to signify your appointment acceptance by 11 a.m. Eastern time of the program on April 6th. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about applications, so I'll probably just answer those as we go. Tuition, it's actually really more of a fee since we don't really have classes. It's just $2,500. We do not provide housing, but we do link you up to a resource intern once accepted into the program who will provide information. And I also send out information related to housing and living in New Haven that is kind of put together by the current intern class and reviewed every year. In terms of the outcomes of the program, we have 100% pass rate for the registration exam within 1 year of the first attempt, which is the Ascend required outcome measure. In the past 3 years, 94% of our test takers the first time would pass the exam. And then all of our interns that seek employment in the field have found work within 6 months of program completion. So once you complete the internship, you would be expected to pass the exam without problem, and you would be expected to be very employable.
All right. Thank you for that overview. That was very informative. So I'll move right along to the 5 questions that I ask every director that comes on the podcast. And these questions were put together with the help of some of my undergrad students to really make sure I was asking the tough questions of each of the directors to get the information they really like to know. So my first question is, what is one thing in particular that you just really love to see when you're reading an applicant's personal statement?
That's a great question. I guess what I really like to see is I like to be able to get to know the person a little bit more through their statement and not just see like a repeat of their resume. So I want to know a little bit about you. I like to have an authentic and genuine voice. And really just kind of just show your excitement for the field and why you want to be a registered dietitian, and why you want to come to our program, why you think our program is for you. So those are probably the biggest things that I'm looking for in the personal statement, along with the basics of grammar and writing and spell checking and all of those little things that can color the perspective of the person reading your application.
All right. Well, my second question is a true or false question. And true or false, an applicant's resume should be 1 page and 1 page only. Either way, why?
Okay. So I like a shorter resume. I will say that, but I don't hold our interns to that standard. So I think if your resume needs to be a little bit longer because you've had more jobs or positions that are pertinent, that you want to make sure are included, I think that is totally fine. But I do advise against, an objective at the top and a listing of all of this, like your computer skills and things like that. Those are sort of a given. And so you probably wouldn't want to take space away from the points that you're really trying to bring forward on your resume.
All right. So what is one thing that an applicant may do? And this could be in the application itself, maybe in that video that they do at an open house, at some interaction that you have with them. What is one or more things that they could do that would raise some red flags for you, to where you would maybe say, this person's maybe not a good fit for our program?
That is a really challenging question. I will definitely look to the group to give additional points if I miss something, because I think we all have slightly different red flags. I will start by saying the type of applicant that we're looking for is someone who works well with others, someone who's team oriented, someone who's engaged, independently motivated, and really wants to succeed. So when I see the opposite of that in any way, that is a red flag for me. When I see somebody who, is a me first kind of a person, who doesn't like to work well with others, who's really competitive to the point where they would try to almost undermine others. Those are things that we don't like to see. Let's face it, in this day and age, you are not working by yourself in almost anything that you do. So we really want somebody who wants that team experience and is willing to cheerlead for others, and kind of we're in it together, kind of a mindset. Other red flags might be when I see in a recommendation, any kind of indication that there's potentially a personality challenge with an intern. And something that's really important to us is that there's some gratitude. This is a really hard program, and we recognize that, and we're here to support you. But at the same time, you have a bunch of really busy people that are trying to support and mentor you. And so we really want the interns who come here to understand that they, it's different than school. There will be support, but there's no hand holding. We want you to have as high a standard for yourself as we have for you. So I don't enjoy having to provide that high standard if I find an intern just doesn't really hold themselves accountable for things. And, I don't feel like in my role, I don't feel like I need to be the person who motivates you. I hope to find people coming already very motivated to be their best. Anyone want to add anything to that?
I think one of the other things that's important too is you're looking for a well-rounded student. So you don't want someone who the only thing on their application is good grades. Certainly that's important, but, someone might have a slightly, a little bit lower GPA, but has some really good work experience or volunteer experience that is more than just observational experience. And that, because like Lisa was talking about, you have to be able to work with people, you have to have your knowledge base, but you have to be able to work with people, and you have to want to work with people if you're choosing this field.
Thanks, Anna. That's a really good addition to what I said. And you'll probably notice I didn't start off with grades. It is important to us, but we are not the type of selection committee that will automatically disregard somebody who has, a poor grade in one class. So I think that's important to know too. I mean, we do find that applicants who have a strong science background and a good foundation do better in our program and have like a little bit less of transition kind of problems. But we certainly have accepted people who've had C's in, organic chemistry and have done really well in the program. So we never look at just one piece.
What is one area of the program that you're working on trying to make even better for the interns?
That's actually a really good question. I think we meet as a faculty every year to kind of talk through how things are going. We have multiple opportunities for the interns to provide feedback to us throughout the year. They can do an optional and anonymous survey right after every rotation. And they also can do an anonymous exit survey at the end of the year, which I will be transparent and say we get a lot more feedback at the end of the year when people feel like they're on their way out and they feel a little more comfortable being totally honest, which is fine. So we review that with a lot of detail, and we really take take into consideration the feedback. And for the most part, we get some comments related to additional classes and seminar days they might like to have. But on the rotation front, people really are satisfied with the variety and the breadth of the different rotations and how much time they get to spend. I think one of the things that, we could maybe do a little bit better at is maybe offering a little bit more in terms of like long-term care. That's something that we hear. So we're trying to look at that, providing some opportunities to get out into the community. Last year's class did get to go to a food bank and they enjoyed that. So we hear those types of comments, but in terms of the main principles, I mean, you're achieving all the competencies with no problems, usually more than once throughout the year, and having exposure to a lot of different patient types, and learning a lot about yourself along the way in terms of just the changing of rotations every couple of weeks, and getting accustomed to really never having a chance to land somewhere for a long period of time. In the beginning, I think that's the biggest challenge for our interns, but they recognize that, but they wouldn't suggest a change to it. Does anybody else have feedback in terms of what we should be working on? Yeah, I have to say, we don't really get that many suggestions for change. I think last year we had 2 interns who said make the program shorter. So, but I feel like that's sort of a known, when you're applying here, you're going to be here for almost a year. So
this last question of my 5 is a 2-part question. And the first part is, what are the 3 best adjectives, descriptors, or phrases that you feel really describe your program overall?
Professional development. I would start with that because I feel like not only are you learning nutrition, but you are also learning how to be a good employee and a good teammate. And so I think that's equally important in this day and age. So that'd be one. I guess I would have to say clinical, because I do think there's just so much that you're learning related to medical nutrition therapy during this year. And then the third, I guess I would probably say traditional. I feel like this is a, the standalone hospital-based internship is a dying breed. I feel like, there's fewer and fewer of us, but I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I do believe that we provide among the best experiences for somebody who wants to be a clinical registered dietitian. I don't think there's any dispute that you're working hands-on with all these patients. We don't need to resort to simulations and case studies and things like that. You are learning with actual patients your whole year. So I guess that'd be one thing that I would say would set us apart. I know I didn't do a good job of actual adjectives, but I guess those would be my descriptors.
Yeah, exactly what it turns into anyway. So, Donna, did you want to add in?
I think, one of the things that I think people learn from this internship too is collaboration and teamwork. I think that's a big component of what, outside of your own personal professional development, also just your professionalism and your teamwork and collaboration just within the whole healthcare arena. That's, the way healthcare functions. We're all part of a team and we just have different roles on that team, and one role is just as important as the other. So I think you learn to work with a lot of different team members because you're within the same organization. Like Lisa said, it's more of a traditional internship. So although you're rotating rotations very often, you switch preceptors, the medical record is the same basic medical record, but obviously there's differences based on what it is that your patient population is at that time. So I think, that's a strength. You get to know the organization, you get to know the different team members in this organization, and you get to really, you feel like you're part of Yale New Haven Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And I think the intern class too, we're a little bit of a larger class, and I know there's larger ones, but in regular years, the interns really do get the opportunity to spend time with each other a lot. So there's a lot of support for, sort of we're all in this together, which is sort of what I alluded to a little bit earlier.
All right. Well, the second half of the question is very similar to the first. It would be, the 3 best adjectives or descriptors for your ideal applicant.
Our ideal applicant. Let's see. So I would say bright, engaged, and a good team player. Donna, you have something to add?
I would probably say well-rounded too.
Also open-minded, because there's a lot that comes at you and you have to be flexible and willing to learn and adjust to all the different teaching styles and learning styles and patient populations.
Independent is another one.
I wrote that down on my notes. Said it several times. I'm like, that is a word.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to overstate it. Like we don't expect you to be, finding your way around the hospital independently. Like, we pick you up in the atrium until you learn your way around. I mean, there's definitely support, but it's, we can't do it for you, right? You have to. There's only so much we can do for you.
Is the NICU rotation hands-on or more observational?
So the newborn rotation is definitely hands-on. In fact, Rebecca, who's with me, just recently finished that rotation. So she could certainly give you insight from an intern's perspective. But the majority of our rotations, I don't want to say 100% of them, but the majority of them are all hands-on, where you're actually seeing patients, going into the chart, doing a physical assessment if that's required, evaluating labs, and figuring out what your nutrition treatment's going to be for that patient. So it's definitely hands-on. You have anything to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, I also got to take a peek into the milk room too, which is right next door to the RD's office. So you kind of get an idea of what breast milk purification looks like, and the differences between breast milk and donor milk as well. That's helpful.
And the intern will accompany the dietitian on rounds, and that's where a lot of the decisions are made about formula changes or et cetera for the babies.
Are there any opportunities or study sessions incorporated into the internship to prepare for the RD exam?
Yes, so towards the end of the year, whichever intern is on rotation with me, that's one of their duties, is to query their colleagues related to the study materials that the class would like. And so like this year we did the Eat Right, I forget what it's called. Eat Right Prep. So that was the one they chose this year. In other years, they've chosen visual veggies. So it depends on what the interns want. And then I always ask the ones who've graduated and taken the exam to give me feedback on how well they were prepared based on the study materials and would they recommend any changes. So Kiara and Erica, you want to add anything to that? And our most recent graduates who just took the exam will always do a study session class with the current interns to let them know what to focus on.
I used the gene admin guide and the visual veggies because that's what we were provided, and I thought that they were both helpful. And then the RD exam prep class, I was a student during it and also helped teach it last year. So I think that there's plenty of resources to help you prepare.
All right, great. We have another question from Sophie. Is there a research project included as part of the internship?
So we don't, at this time, we don't have like a capstone. I think that's probably what you're referring to. So we really don't have anything like that. We do have projects throughout the year that are research focused, but you're not necessarily taking an independent research question and pushing that through for the entire year. There are opportunities to do things like that, but they're not embedded in the program. So in terms of an area for focus, that is definitely something we've considered, but we haven't implemented anything like that at this time.
All right. And we have one from Suzette. Have any past interns completed their elective rotation in sports nutrition? If so, where were they able to complete that?
So yes, we do always have a few people who are interested in sports nutrition. The most recent person did their rotation at Exos, and that was actually, I believe she started in Arizona, and I think she actually went to another one. But one of our former graduates actually is the sports dietitian for a college football team. So I do have a connection. So I can't promise that she would be able to take interns, but it would certainly be somebody I could reach out to ask.
Going back to application. So what is the minimum GPA that you're looking for applicants?
Yeah, I mean, so we ask, we like to see around a 3 at the minimum. And we like to see, the science grades are important, like I mentioned. Not that we wouldn't consider somebody, as Donna mentioned multiple times, that is really well-rounded and has good experience and maybe had, a bump in the road in 1 year of college and can kind of explain that in their personal statement as to, what happened and how they've, been able to move past that. So, but we do find, if people struggled in their basic sciences, sometimes they have a little bit more trouble transitioning to such a clinically focused and scientific based program.
And about how many applicants do you average every year?
Yeah, so last year we had fewer applicants than usual. Last year we had in the mid 50s. Normally we would have closer to 70, and we have had as many as 100. But we haven't in a while. I think with the master's requirement, I think more applicants are looking at programs that have a master's associated with them, and we don't have we have an affiliation, so there's an option, but it's not a combined program at this time.
All right, so we have another question from a potential applicant. Is there any homework outside of the clinical rotation?
Yes, I will let either the current interns or the preceptors talk about that.
Good.
There are assignments that you do have to do on each rotation, but I will say that they'll bolster what you're currently learning on each rotation. Like there'll be actual situations that, say like a previous preceptor went through. So you really feel like they're an addition to what you're learning. And also, like, I'll let Ming hop in on this too, because she's also an intern with me.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So there's definitely homework involved pertaining to the rotation you're on, but they're all, at least the ones that I haven't really ran into any troubles completing them on time. And I saw the question. I'm not sure if it means homework or any work. You're not like doing work outside of rotation, but there is homework.
Yeah, there's no like, you don't have to, there's no job, I guess, responsibilities. Meng and Rebecca actually do work per diem in our diet tech call center. But that was a relationship that was prior to the internship. And so they just continue that on weekends right now, but that's a personal choice. So, and the homework, as they both mentioned, is really designed to complement the rotation experiences. There's case studies, there are questions, and so they're designed to get you thinking a little bit beyond what you experienced in your day-to-day work, and give you a little bit more time to consider those aspects of patient care and a little more time to run through them in your head. Here and there, I will get some complaints from interns about the homework for sure. So I'll be honest with that. And one of the questions that I will get is can't this assignment count for more? So I would just turn that around on the intern and say that the assignments it's not a school assignment. You're not working at these assignments for a grade. You're working at them to learn new things and to gain knowledge. And so if you think about it in those terms, you'll understand why we don't grade them. I mean, they are reviewed and graded by your preceptor, but they don't count for a grade. So we're not giving you an A. You are achieving 1% of the competencies that were possible on a rotation. And that's a big distinction. So, and I will say, I think that's one of the hardest things for interns to get adjusted to is we technically are pass-fail. So if you achieve more than 80% of the competencies on any rotation, you pass. If you achieve under 80, you don't pass. So there's really it doesn't associate to a letter grade. And I hammer that home multiple times throughout the year. So, and I talk to the interns about that as well, not to compete with each other. Like, that's something we really advise against is to compare notes on things like that. Like you would normally after, a course to say like, what did you get on that test? It's not like that here. You're passing, you're learning, you're growing your knowledge. And the other thing the assignments are geared toward is to teach you how to teach yourself. Because after you leave this program, there will be things you encounter that you don't know, but you will have a confidence to realize that you'll be able to figure out the answer. You'll know what resources to use. You'll know how to look things up. You'll know how to put them into perspective and to know whether they're applicable to the condition that you're looking at. And that is a skill that you absolutely have to have as a dietitian.
Right. I mean, Lisa makes a really good point because, part of what you're doing is you're becoming a professional. It's not just a job, and this is your career. So either, you're always going to be in a learning mode. I won't tell you how many years I've been practicing, but, I still learn stuff all the time. And so, you're not always doing that in an 8-hour day, but that's part of having a career. And so for you to be able, while you're here, to be exposed to a lot of those resources, to know, like Lisa said, where they are. So when you do have to go to them, you've got at least some experience of different places to start.
And yes, Sophie, the assignments do help you do well on the RT exam. Very true. I like to tell my students it keeps the wheels greased, because once you stop doing certain rotations, you got to make sure that muscle is still there and still working. If there is an internship out there that doesn't give homework, call me. I would love for them to. So that's a thing. Like, that's just part of the process to become a dietitian. It's kind of a rite of passage. You got through all of those competencies, and I know when back in my day we had to show them all twice. So once you got through all of them, you had to go back and do them all again in a different way than you did the first time, just to really show your director, like, I know exactly what I'm doing. Can I go now? That sort of thing.
I think a lot of interns will also tell you too, once they start working in the field, that those assignments that they thought were maybe foolish or ones that they would never use are the ones that they end up going back to the most. So there's always a reason behind the assignments that you're given.
I will say we really don't get, I mean, in terms of the exit survey feedback, we don't really get a lot of complaints about the assignments. And I think at the end of the year, when the intern, looks back at the experience, they're able to see that with a clear vision and say, you know what, that was really pertinent. That was really useful. And even though maybe I didn't want to spend, my evening doing that, I actually did learn something. And I will also say we have, out of respect to people's personal time and having a work-life balance, we have transitioned a lot of our assignments to verbal assignments as well. And I really do like that format. We do a lot of verbals on my rotation. And when I was a clinical preceptor, there was a lot of verbals as well. And I think it really demonstrates to me as a preceptor where maybe the disconnect lies when someone is having trouble making a connection. Whereas if I read something that you wrote on paper, I might not be able to tease that out. I might think that you totally understood it, and in reality, there's a question that's there. And so when I hear you talk through it, I understand the question and I'm able to help you better. So we do. There are definitely assignments on rotations where you're presenting a diet education to your preceptor on a condition, and it's a little nerve-wracking, but yet it's a really good experience because you will be asked direct questions on rounds, and people will want to know your opinion, and that's great because it shows that they value nutrition and they want to incorporate your recommendations. But there's definitely times where you're not exactly sure what the plan should be, and so those are the times where you're honest about that and say, you know what, I want to just go back and clarify something before I give you that answer, and that's totally acceptable. What you don't want to do is give an answer and then have to go back and say that's not the right answer. So it's always better to make sure you're correct before you go off on that.
All right, we have a few more questions. So we have one from Mark. Is it possible to enroll in the master's program with the internship? If so, do any of the interns that enroll in both feel they have enough time to focus on each of them?
So yes, it is, and you're able to make that decision after you get accepted to the program. So you don't have to decide beforehand. You find out in April, and they do rolling admissions, and they'll take interns usually up through June. So Rebecca's actually in the master's program at University of New Haven right now, so she could probably speak to that. I will say the internship is busy. It is like having a full-time job because you are working every day, and then you do have assignments. So I certainly think that it's challenging to also be in the master's program. But we have had interns do it successfully. More than one. So it can be done, but it is you have to know what you're taking on. And it hasn't happened much, but there was one student I remember who really had sort of like a culture shock because she sort of expected that she was in the master's program. And so I would be accommodating different schedules and different workloads. And it really isn't like that. The internship is the internship. And then if you choose to enroll in the master's program, it really is, it's a side by side, but they're separate.
Yeah. And to speak to that, I think it's just more of an assessment of your own self-management. It's really a beautiful, orchestra of how many tasks you think you can do. And also too, like for me, I made sure that the class that I enrolled in paired well with the internship. So the internship was always a priority for me. And if anything conflicted with that, it just got, checked. But, so just think about that when you're considering those things. But UNH was very accommodating in terms of answering all my questions, in terms of figuring out which track I wanted to go with. So, please feel free to reach out to them as well if you have any specifics, but it can be done. But you're very busy, I will say that.
All right. Suzette has a question for the interns. Do you find that with the time required to complete the homework and other assignments outside of the rotation, it's possible to have a part-time job during the internship?
I also work at the call center, which is what the techs at Yale New Haven does right now. And sometimes I pick up shifts here and there, and I work on my weekends on. So I work 8 hours Saturdays and Sundays every 2 weeks. So for me personally, it hasn't been too challenging to complete my assignments on time. But like we talked about, it's really how the person where their priority lies, and it's different from people to people. So I would have to say that I think just personally, maybe a per diem job is more manageable than a full part-time job when you have to make multiple commitments, just so they don't cross into each other, where you would potentially run into more problems and conflicts.
And I just kind of wanted to clarify this, because it's my understanding that out of the 12 interns that are selected, there's not a pre-select amount that are just for the master's and just for the dietetic internship, because that's like a rolling decision if you want to do the master's program. Is that correct?
That's correct. So you're accepted into the internship separate from the master's program. But if you decide to go into the master's program and you are accepted to our program, you are automatically accepted to UNH. So they'll take the same application materials, but you're right. There's no distinction. It states 2 different tracks in DICAS, but you actually, it doesn't really matter what one you select, to tell you the truth. Okay. We're not distinguishing our applicants based on that basis.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question for you as well. When it comes to completing the internship, is there help with finding a job? Is there anything like that? Is there any, I guess, just encouragement from you guys, or just help finding a place to go? Yes,
encouragement, of course. So I think, when you're looking at a hospital versus a school-based program, we don't have a career guidance section. I would say, right. Me as the director and our preceptors and our fellow managers are the career guidance section. I don't think we don't do that badly overall. I think our interns.
I'm sure you do great.
Yeah, our interns find jobs. There's a lot of positions that come across our listserv. Our clinical connections will let us know when they have positions open. We often, not always, but often will have positions open. As you can see, we have 2 of our graduates on this open house with us that were former interns and hired into the department, and so that does happen as well for people who are in the area or want to relocate to the area. So but. And I will say, Donna and I run a class in the spring on resume writing and interviewing, and we get a lot of positive feedback on the exit survey about that class. If anything, the interns ask if it could be longer. But it's a working class. People bring their resumes as just the laundry list that they have for their resume, and then we help them clean it up and personalize it for each job and talk through that and give examples of the types of interview questions that you would face and how to answer those questions. So we have everybody try to come up with an answer to a certain question. And then we go around the room and discuss what would be good about that answer, what could be improved about that answer. So I think, there's those kinds of supports. And then it always happens that there's at least one intern who is juggling more than one offer and trying to decide what to do. And so I'll, almost always be talking to at least one person that finds themselves in that situation. And typically what it is they receive an offer for a position, but it's their second choice. And the offer they're waiting on is the position they really want. And how would I handle that? And what would my suggestions be for them? So it's those kinds of
that's a tricky situation.
Yeah. You always have somebody who runs into that. And, you take a chance, right? It depends on how hungry you are and how necessary it is for you to get a job right away, and whether you can afford to let a definite job go and in the hopes that you'll get the other job. So we talk through a lot of those types of scenarios.
How can, if we are given the opportunity to have an interview to be selected as one of your interns, how can we best prepare for the interview?
So I would say if you do a quick Google search on interview questions, you will come up with, a good selection of questions that are pretty typical. So I think most interviewers these days use behavioral based questions. So they'll ask you things like, tell me about a time, or give me an example of. And so you can prepare by having a few specific examples at your fingertips that you're comfortable talking through. So just preparing some bullet points of what you might want to say, because in the moment you get nervous. And so it's good to know, like, what, if you're blanking on something, it's good to know, like, oh, I was going to talk about this. And then you can, once you get going, you can kind of get into it. But Mang and Rebecca just went through that, and Kiara and Erica had to go through it as well. And so, I'd certainly be interested in their perspectives on preparing.
I'll go first. I think for me, like I definitely reviewed my personal statement just so what I was talking about was consistent. And like Lisa said, I went online. I had conversations with people about some really great interview questions, just so you can brainstorm, and also think about the things that you really want to highlight about yourself and your strengths, and also thinking about things that you want to learn, because that's really what this internship is about. It's focusing on what your interests are, and everyone's really great about focusing on that for you. So it's really catered to your needs as well.
What I also did is I found that mock interviews with a friend or a family or someone else might be helpful, just because you might get nervous in the moment, and it's always good practice to run through the questions with someone else so you can get more comfortable. And I think just for me, a general tip is that when you're doing the interview, prepare questions that you have for the program for the interviewers, just so it's another way to showcase your interests.
That's also a really good suggestion for both the application to the internship and also for jobs. It's great to learn a little bit about the place that you're looking to go, and really be able to speak to why you're interested in that particular setting.
All right, so as we close out today, I'm going to ask Lisa and Donna to both give us one last take-home message for potential applicants this year, next year, any year in the future.
Sure, great. Thanks for that offer. So I think one of the things that I would like you to take away for those who are considering applying to our program, I would say don't let fear stand in your way. I think everyone feels a little uncomfortable and a little scared of the internship experience, and sometimes the Yale name can be a little daunting for people. But I would definitely encourage you, if you're interested in a clinical internship, like we discussed, if you're interested in having that exposure to actual patient types throughout the different rotations, if you're interested in pediatrics, oncology, transplant, all the different areas that we offer here that maybe aren't possible at other programs, then I would say then apply. You have nothing to lose by applying, except for your application fee. And, I think I will just say that we really do consider everyone's application. There's no application that we discard out of hand. Everyone gets an equal shot. And, we're looking for people that really want to be engaged and professional dietitians, and we are willing to train you to get there. Everyone has a really challenging first quarter where there's a lot to learn. There's a huge learning curve, and we almost rebuild you after that first quarter. And, so I guess that would be my takeaway message is just don't be afraid to try to apply here. If you're interested, if you think that this is the program for you, let us consider you and see if we think that we can give you what you're looking for.
Yep. And I would add to that too, that, if we accept you into our program, we know that you can be successful. We're not going to accept someone who we know is going to, not make it through the year. So we've evaluated your application. We know what the expectations are, and we know you're going to be successful. So if you put your effort forward, and some of the ways you can show us that you put effort forward and you really want to be here, make sure you have someone else read your application before you hit that submit button, because, you might have a spelling error that you just keep missing every single time because you read it the way you think you wrote it and stuff. So it's, that shows your detail and your desire. And it's, it shows some of your character as well. So, I would always encourage anybody with any application to have somebody else look at it and read it. And, so for some people that's uncomfortable, but they're going to pick up things with a different set of eyes than you do yourself, because you read it as the way you think you wrote it, which is not always the way you wrote it. So, I wish everybody a lot of luck with their application process. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding in the end. So.
Yeah, I mentioned already, this is a labor of love. I mean, I have a position and a job, whether or not I'm the director of the internship. And the hospital, does not require us to have an internship. So we do this because we feel like we have something to offer, future dietitians, and we feel like we train really solid dietitians. And so, that's our goal, and that's the only reason that we do this. So I guess that'd be my last statement.
And thank you, Lisa, and all of the guests that were able to join us today. And for those at home, if you're interested in the program at the Yale New Haven Hospital, and to get into touch with Lisa, I provided the link to their program website in the description below this video. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode with another awesome dietetic internship. And we'll see you next time.